From courtside of the virtual hardwood, it's the NLSC Podcast. This is episode 531. I am Andrew in our forum, Andrew NLSC on X. With me as always, my co-host Derek, DV3 in our forum, and DV3G and DV384 on X. Derek, good to be on here to talk basketball gaming and real basketball with you. To that point, what's on the docket this week?
So we have three topics to go over on this week's show. First, we will pay tribute to Bill Walton. Second, we will discuss what EA Sports College Football 25 could mean for the future of EA Sports basketball games. And lastly, we will go to the mailbag, where I asked the community to create an enforcer starting five using NBA players past and present. So yes, Andrew, Bill Walton passed away recently at the age of 71. And while he did have a short NBA career due to foot injuries, man, what a resume for such a short career. He only played 10 years, technically 10 years. And we got 76, 77 rebound champ, two-time All-Star, Hall of Famer inducted in 1993. He was a 76, 77 block champ, two-time NBA champ, one with the Trailblazers in 76, 77, and then with the Celtics in 85, 86. Two-time All-NBA, two-time All-Defensive, 76, 77 Finals MVP, 77, 78 NBA MVP, 85, 86 Sixth Man of the Year, and obviously recently was a member of the NBA 75th anniversary team. But played with, he played with the Trailblazers, he played with the Clippers for a few injured seasons, and then finished his career out in Boston in 85, 86, and then 86, 87. But yeah, he was an amazing player, but also a great personality. He was one of my favorite people on the mic, Andrew, in video games and in real life. I think him and Tom Heinsohn might be the two people that loved basketball the most, right? Maybe ever in this world. You could hear it in, every word they spoke on the mic. They were so into the action. Bill Walton always, brought joy to the broadcast. So yeah, Andrew, that's a little bit about Bill Walton's legacy career-wise in the, the broadcasting booth, and then, also on the hardwood. But, he also leaves a family behind.
Yes, had four sons with his first wife, Susie. Adam, Nathan, Luke, of course, played in the NBA, and Chris, and was also married to his second wife, Laurie, lived with her in San Diego. And it's difficult to call a Hall of Famer underrated, but I kind of feel that sometimes Bill Walton was, because of the injuries. There have been many great centers throughout NBA history, of course, but such a talented player, such a smart player. Former Blazers coach Dr. Jack Ramsey once recalled meeting with him at his home. He was meeting players before the 1977 season, where they won the championship, of course, the Trailblazers, and he recalled that Bill Walton said to him, "Coach, don't assume we know anything." And you think of all the players, Derek, who have that reputation as coach killers and uncoachable and so forth, and just the humility of that, acknowledging we may be great players, but we don't know everything, we don't see everything, we need you to coach us, I think just speaks to Bill Walton's character. And all of the stories that have been coming out about him this week, obviously talking about him as a player, but also what a great man he was, and having that joy for the game, as you said, having that great personality, being so affable. Mike Breen told a great story about spending some time with him when his father was in his later years with Parkinson's, and Bill Walton going out of his way to organise a special trip and putting them up as guests in his home rather than staying at a hotel. Just fantastic stories about his character, and again, a tremendous on the court as well. And I also remember him as a broadcaster. Obviously, he was retired by the time we started watching basketball, and a great commentator, and people sometimes used to make fun of him, throw it down big man and some of his other phrases, but again, it was bringing joy to the game, joy to the broadcast, that love of basketball. And I also, of course, remember his classic segment with Frank Layden from the second Dazzling Dunks and Basketball Bloopers video back in the day. Just great comedy. It may seem a little bit cheesy to some people. I shared that video. Adam Ryan of the In All Airness podcast shared that on X, and I reposted it. Just a classic bit from back in the day. Yeah, it was very sad news. 71, it still feels too young, and as always, F cancer.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things about Bill Walton is the fact that he was never afraid to give somebody a compliment. He would give somebody a compliment that played the same position as him. He would say that player was better than me. He would say, he often said that Robert Parrish was the best big man shooter of all time. He was floored by the skills of Kevin McHale and could not shut up about how good Kevin McHale was and how great of a friend Kevin McHale was as well. Like when you hear Bill Walton talk basketball, there's no agendas, right? There was no biases. There was nothing like that. It was a pure love for the game. And he really gave, former teammates of his, opponents, players after he retired and players that came before him, he gave all of them their flowers. And I also want to point out, you were talking about stories. This is one of my favorites that somebody shared. This is how Bill Walton celebrated his NBA championship in 1986 per a 2009 Boston.com interview with Larry Bird. So these are Larry Bird's words. Bill came over. It was late. Doorbell rang and Dinah answered, and she was like, "Hey, Bill, Larry's in bed." I heard him. So I go out and I said, "Hey, man, I ain't doing this tonight. I can't." He goes, "Don't worry about it. I don't even need you. I'm just going to sit down here at the table." He had a bottle of whiskey and he said, "I'll be here when you wake up." And he was. So that just sounds like classic Bill Walton, Andrew. So Bill Walton drank by himself while Larry and Dinah were in bed, and then they woke up in the morning and he was still there. That might be my favorite story. I also want to point something out. You talked about him being underrated. First off, I don't think people understand how impressive his numbers were at 24 in that championship season in 76-77 with the Portland Trailblazers. So I believe he was second in MVP voting that year, and he averaged 18.6 points, 14.4 rebounds, which led the league, 3.8 assists, 3.2 blocks per game. That also led the league. 1 steal a game, and he shot 52.8 from the floor. Just such an all-around big man. That's all in 34.8 minutes a game. But even more impressive, Andrew, is how he upped his game in the playoffs. And oftentimes I think that's truly the mark of a great player is, when the going gets tough, when the games matter even more, how do you perform? And that's something that's, in today's NBA, where I was always impressed with Jamal Murray over the last few years, right? Like he really upped his game in the playoffs. But anyway, so for Bill Walton in the playoffs that year, he averaged 18.2 points, and this is in 19 games, but he averaged 15.2 rebounds, Andrew, 5.5 assists, meaning he was touching the ball more and sharing it more, 3.4 blocks. That was also up from the season. 1.1 steals, also up. And he still shot over 50% from the floor. That is just ridiculously impressive. And then he did the same thing with Boston in 85-86, where his numbers went up in the playoffs in those 16 games. And he played 18.2 minutes a game in those playoffs. So I love players like Bill Walton that when the lights are brightest, they were their best.
And, of course, tremendous college player as well. Very famously led the Bruins, the UCLA Bruins, to 2 consecutive 30-0 seasons and a record 88-game winning streak, which is just incredible. He also had a personal winning streak of 142 games, just dominating the competition. In the 1972 Final Four, he had a game with 33 points and 21 rebounds on 11 of 13 shooting, 11 of 12 free throws against Louisville in the semifinals, and had 24 points and 20 rebounds as they beat Florida State in the championship game. So his college career alone was really impressive. NBA career cut short and hampered by injuries, obviously. But, again, such a tremendous player, winning at every level.
Yeah, you can't beat that. Very similar to Kareem, right? And one of his nicknames, I thought that was funny, was actually Grateful Red. You know how he loved the Grateful Dead.
Of course.
But the Grateful Red, because he had red hair. That was one of his nicknames. When you watch Bill Walton play, and you've seen me share quite a few highlights from him on Twitter, well before he passed. And I shared some highlights of him with the Clippers, with the Celtics, and with the Trailblazers. He is just basketball perfection. beautiful mid-range shot. He had those sweeping hooks in the lane with his long arms, which were virtually unguardable. He was an amazing passer. Remember you and I playing NBA Live 98 and trying to do that Walton Bird pass?
Absolutely.
When we were using that retro mod and whatnot. Great passer, great rebounder, intimidator at the rim, great shot blocker. And he was so unselfish that he's one of those guys that absolutely could have averaged more points, Andrew. Right. But he was all about team and all about the common goal. And, he took that back seat in 85, 86 and became the sixth man of the year, playing for Boston. And he played under 20 minutes a game that year, but that was fine with him. He had the time of his life. That kind of revived his basketball career. But yeah, shout out to the legend, Bill Walton. And yeah, I feel for his family. And for the basketball world, because it was better when he was in it.
A lot of people have been saying that, and it definitely is true. I think Charles Barkley had words very much to that effect, that the world is not such a joyful place without Bill Walton. And again, such a great personality, always brought that in, whether it was comedic sketches in that all-new Dazzling Dunks and Basketball Bloopers, the comments he'd make during a game, but also the insight. And we talked about some of our least favorite commentators on the real and virtual hardwood a few episodes ago. Bill Walton, absolutely one of the favorites, again, in video games or in real life. I would take him over pretty much everyone who's doing analysis today, and, all time as well. He's one of the greats in the booth and on the court.
Bill is one of my favorite color commentators to go along with Tom Heinsohn, whether he was doing nationally broadcast games or Celtics games, Mike Fratello, Doug Collins, etc. He's like right in that group. Like I said, he brought joy to every broadcast. You never knew what he was going to say, because sometimes he would just go off the rails and make some of these outlandish comparisons, right? Similar to what Tom Heinsohn would do as well in the booth. But it was so funny, and he just brought so much humor to the broadcast, and like you said, also that insight. So yeah, and also in basketball video games, I've loved using Bill Walton. On NBA Street Volume 2, I've shared a bunch of footage of me playing that, and normally I use the legends in that game, and I usually put out on the street, it's usually Magic, Michael Jordan, and Bill Walton. And so I have Bill Walton protecting the rim, making great passes, swatting shots off the glass, all of that stuff. So Bill Walton has also been historically fun in video games.
Yeah, and he's been a legend in games since, at the very least, NBA Live 2000 in 1999. A couple of games earlier than that, obviously, as well. But it's been a staple of the Legends rosters, official historical rosters, for about a quarter of a century now. So a lot of people, I think, have learned about Bill Walton through games, and that's cool. Before we go on, a reminder that the NLSC podcast comes out every week on the NLSC, NBA-live.com, as well as our YouTube channel. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast apps. If you're listening on any of those apps, we'd greatly appreciate a review. To keep up with the show and everything we're doing with basketball gaming in general, connect with us on social media. On Twitter and Facebook, we are the NLSC. We also have an Instagram, NLSC Basketball, and on YouTube, we're youtube.com/NBA Live Series Center. Once again, visit us at NBA-live.com, where in addition to the podcast, you'll also find all of our original content, as well as our forum and modding community.
So, Andrew, let's get to our main topic this week. And I asked the community, I said there is a lot of buzz around EA Sports College Football 25. The gameplay and features look promising. If this is a successful launch and feedback stays positive, can you see this paving the way for EA Sports College Basketball to make a return? So I'm going to throw that right over to you. What do you think?
I think it's possible. I mean, we've talked about it before. If EA were to return with college basketball rather than an NBA game, they're not competing directly with NBA 2K. They're offering something different, a different hook, if you will, something that 2K isn't doing. So it would be a wise direction for them to go. We've talked about how we'd love to see NBA Live return. I still stand by that. I would still love to see NBA Live return. have that alternative to NBA 2K, but I think it would be a wise decision to start with college basketball and offer something that 2K isn't, so you do have that hook. You don't have that direct competition. And certainly it seems there's a possibility that they will consider college basketball as well. And now you do have these agreements with players. You have that the door has been opened to compensate players to appear in the games. So, yeah, I'd love to see it.
So the Live King agrees with you, as do I, that it might be best for EA Sports to come back first with college basketball, especially if they gain super momentum with this EA Sports College Football 25 game, because it's going to get fans in the seats for EA Sports again, right? They're going to be popular again. People are going to be more welcome to them creating another sports title based on how well they do on this college football game. The thing is that I feel like sports gamers are pretty flexible, meaning that I don't think that they mostly stay to one sport. I mean, basically, a lot of the people that play, football video games also play basketball video games and vice versa. So my opinion on this is, if you come out with a college basketball game first, you already know what your relationships are with the NCAA and whatnot, and what you might be able to get into a college basketball game. If you can use those relationships to your advantage to make a more seamless process when creating a new college basketball video game, then, and that is received well, like your college football title. People like the gameplay, people like the features, they feel like the game is fair to them, all of that stuff. Then there is your base and momentum for the return of NBA Live. And the gameplay wouldn't have to be exact to like copy and paste from the college basketball game. In fact, that would be instantly noticed, and EA Sports would take a ton of flack for that, right? You've already seen the people saying things like, hopefully this college football game isn't a Madden reskin, etc. But, if they can use that gameplay base and tweak it to play, more like NBA basketball, make it look a bit different, all of that stuff, then they could, be back in business in both the college basketball space and in the NBA basketball space.
And that is something that NBA Live and the March Madness / NCAA basketball series did really well back in the day. They were sharing tech, obviously, but the college games did stand out. They had some different mechanics. They felt different to the NBA style of play. It wasn't just a reskin. I mean, obviously there were some things that were reused, as I said, and reskinned to some extent, I suppose, but there was a different feel to the college games, and that is why they're so fun to revisit these days, along with the NBA games of that generation. Sometimes. NBA Live 07, not so much, obviously. But something that I noticed about College Football 25 is that it's coming out worldwide, or at least there is an Australian release. I looked this up, and there is an Australian release, which we didn't get back in the day with any college sports games. This was due to the international licensing rights and distribution rights for the NCAA being held by a different party. There were difficulties or problems with the expense of it, getting that license to release those games internationally. So that just didn't happen. You had to import them. And as it was, you either needed a region-free console like the PS3, or a modded console, or a converter, the universal adapter for Super Nintendo, for example, to play those games from when you imported them into a PAL region. But College Football 25 is going to be an international release from the looks of things, so there's going to be the possibility of worldwide popularity, or the more gamers around the world getting eyes on this game and interest in college sports, in a college sports video game. So, yeah, I think doing the same with basketball is once again, a wise decision.
Absolutely agree. I also want to point something out. Look at the positive reception based on the early gameplay footage of college football 25. You know that there's a lot of people out there that did not like EA Sports, right? There's a lot of people out there that are definitely not a fan of EA Sports when it comes to what happened with their basketball series and how they handled that, and how they haven't been around now since NBA Live 19. But look at the positive reception related to the features in the game, the graphics, the gameplay, etc. This is why I've said so many times on this podcast that early gameplay footage just needs to capture an audience. It needs to be strong. It needs to show well. The features need to be talked about appropriately, and they need to, appeal to a mass audience, etc. So far with College Football 25, they have knocked it out of the park. So hopefully the game on release is as strong as it's showing during the preview season. But, I've talked about this before as well. If you go on Steam, the majority of games on Steam are positive, very positive, or overwhelmingly positive for reviews. There's this myth that goes around that people only go online and talk about something if they have something to complain about, right? That's a huge myth. There's this thing that, most people want to speak up when they have an issue or want to complain about something. But look no further than all of these games on Steam that get thousands upon thousands of positive reviews, and most of those reviews being positive. And then you have a game like NBA 2K24, which is mostly negative on Steam, right? It means there's a reason for that, Andrew, right?
Sure.
That means that gamers are not satisfied with that product. The majority of gamers are not satisfied with that product. So the point I'm getting at here is, I don't care what company makes a game. If it shows well and you're fair to the gamer and you're giving people what they want, even whether it's preview season, whether it's upon release, whether it's updates to the game, people are going to talk positively about it, and it's going to gain momentum for that company, right? And it's going to gain momentum for that company's future endeavors. And that is one of the biggest reasons why I am hoping, strongly hoping, that EA Sports College Football 25 is a massive home run, not just a home run, a grand slam, and that everybody gets super pumped about EA Sports again, and then that motivates them and gives them, leverage to start, either working, maybe they already are, but working on a college or NBA title and getting that out to the public, because we need competition in this space.
And how many times have we said that competition and choices, alternatives are so important? And ideally, you want to have alternatives that are about equal in quality, obviously, but as long as it is enjoyable, playable, a viable alternative, it is still worth having in the space. Look at all the games we had back in the day. Was that sustainable? No, probably not, looking back. And they weren't all of equal quality, but a lot of them were fun. And as long as a game is fun, and it's a solid product, and it's viable, and it can get better, that is the start you need for a basketball game returning and being an alternative to NBA 2K. And that is something we've said so many times before. We need that competition. Obviously, EA Sports, Electronic Arts, they have a reputation. People are rightfully skeptical about them. But they've also made some pretty good games over the years. And when we talk about 2K fatigue and the issues with 2K, why would you shut down an alternative? The idea of an alternative, even if it is from EA, even if you do have that skepticism, understandably so, why would you just be content with 2K while also complaining about all the problems with 2K? Let somebody else throw their hat into the ring.
Well, I do want to say this, though. While I agree with you about, we need competition in the space and that everybody realistically should want another competitor in this space in order for 2K to up their game, in order for them to be, more fair to the gamer, and also just to have options. But if they start previewing a basketball game, so whether it be college basketball or an NBA title, the return of NBA Live, they cannot show up poorly during preview season.
Oh,
like the game can't show poor because of their track record.
Definitely.
Right? So their track record is better with their NCAA football series. NCAA Football 14, some say it's the greatest football video game ever made, right? So they already had momentum due to the fact that their last college football release was a home run. Now you go to the basketball video game side. Their last college basketball release was NCAA Basketball 10, which was received okay. It wasn't probably the home run they wanted it to be, but it was received pretty well. and then NBA Live 19, which was received okay, and whatnot, but then they've been gone for, upwards to 6 years now, and they haven't created a new game. So the fan base feels pretty abandoned at this time. So you can't preview a new basketball game in the wrong light. Like, it has to show well right out of the gate. The feature list has to be full and capture what people want. I don't think you can have a weak first game in the comeback, whether it be college basketball or a new NBA Live.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at NBA Live 14. And the whole narrative around that, of course, was, they've been working on this for 4 years or 3 years, and they hadn't been working on it for 3 or 4 years. They'd been rebuilding the game a couple of times, rebuilding the team, but they didn't communicate that very well, for obvious reasons. But to your point, that was a weak comeback. It didn't impress. There were aspects of Live 14 that we can appreciate in hindsight, but I remember putting it on. I went to a midnight launch for the PlayStation 4, got NBA Live 14 and NBA 2K14 at the time, came home, played them both. I've already gone into my reasons why I was kind of sour on 2K14 out of the gate that year. Won't go into them again. But Live 14 was the first game I put on, and I really regretted... Well, I won't say I regretted getting the PS4, but I was certainly let down on that midnight launch, going out there with so much excitement to pick it up and throw it on and get into some midnight gaming there. And yeah, was just so disappointed with Live 14. This is what you're coming back with? So no, I absolutely agree. You need to impress. Is it going to be the best game ever? Probably not. Is there going to be room for improvement? I would certainly hope so. Even if it's a great game, you want it to keep getting better and better, as 2K did for many years. But yeah, you can't come back with a Live 14.
Exactly. And also another positive here is Scott O'Gallagher is heavily promoting EA Sports College Football 25. Not only is he promoting it, it sounds like he was a lead developer on that game, or a person that was heavily involved in that process. And I feel like if basketball does come back, whether it be college or NBA, I feel like he would be heavily involved, like he was when he worked for Take-Two and was working on the NBA 2K series. So I think that's a big difference from what was happening there in the mid-late 2010s. It could be a stronger development team, right? And there could be better direction from the suits. So that makes me a little bit more hopeful. I also want to point out that I've been optimistic about the return of NBA Live or a college basketball game for years. And you've definitely had your doubts when it comes to the NBA Live series.
For sure.
Has your tune changed?
I think I'm going to believe it when I see it. This is obviously intriguing. I think it may open up the possibility, certainly of college basketball, maybe the NBA. But I think at this point, 5 years of silence, or going on 5 years of silence after they announced that Live 20 wasn't going to be a thing, I'm going to have to see some more proof to really get excited about it. But no, I'm trying to remain optimistic about it and certainly open-minded. So it's certainly possible. And I think you bring up a great point about Scott O'Gallagher, that leadership is so important, and having the right development team is so important. I know that sounds like it's stating the obvious, but you go back to the history of NBA Live, what they were doing with NBA Elite 11, bringing in a hockey guy to oversee that project and bring hockey mechanics to a basketball game, handing over NBA Live to a Madden guy, to a former Madden lead. That seems like such a terrible idea to me. And the obvious answer would be to have somebody who's passionate about basketball, knowledgeable about basketball, someone who's played basketball, like Scott O'Gallagher, to lead up that project. So I agree that if he's on that project as the creative director, the lead, whatever title, then it certainly does bode well for the game.
Right. If I get seriously sick, I'm calling a doctor, not a chef. Right. Like that makes no sense that they brought a hockey guy in. I will never understand that. But yeah, leadership is so important. Something else too to note is that if EA Sports comes back with a college basketball game first, they will be the only developer in that space. And that means that they could capture the hearts of millions of college basketball fans. And kind of like what NBA 2K does, where NBA 2K has kind of cornered that market. right? For NBA basketball games, and the people only have that one option. And because of that, they, get record sales every single year. It could be similar with EA Sports. If they're the only ones coming out with a college basketball game, those who love college basketball and also love video games, that's their option. And so it could make the company a lot of money. And if it's made well, it can give them a lot of momentum. So it does, like you and the Live King stated, I agree. I think it could make sense for them to go, college basketball first.
And if you have that impressive tech, if you have that track record, if you've reestablished that trust in the brand and your ability to make a basketball game, remember, Derek, a lot of people say that NBA Live was never good. We know better because we've played NBA Live since the early days. We've seen it at its height, we've seen it at its best, we've seen it at its worst. People do forget because 2K has been the juggernaut for so long. Live has been mediocre or downright bad for so long, unfortunately. But they did make great games up until the 7th generation, and there were some solid games in the 7th generation. NBA Live 10, there are quite a few people, myself included, who feel that NBA Live 10's gameplay is more accessible, sometimes more enjoyable than NBA 2K10, although 2K10 is a deeper product overall with a much better franchise mode and legends and other features, and of course strong gameplay in its own right. But Live does have that more accessible freestyle control in NBA Live 10. But Live has made some great games in the past. EA does have that reputation, but they've also made some fine sports games over the years. So if they do come back, if they can impress, and to your point, they absolutely do need to, if they can, they will win over the hearts of sports gamers and basketball gamers. So it is a tremendous opportunity, potentially.
You're also talking to somebody who enjoys putting on NBA Live 15 and enjoys that gameplay more right now than NBA 2K24.
Sure.
Right. I think that I can point out many things that I think are stronger from a gameplay perspective in a game like NBA Live 15 than NBA 2K24 for my personal preference. And I do think that I'm not alone in that. I do think that there are people out there that do enjoy some of the past Live games over these recent 2Ks. And, we've heard some of that commentary, whether it was on the Discord or whether it was on Twitter or, on Facebook, et cetera. So I hope they do come back in the basketball gaming space. I want to point out that we did get quite a few responses to my question, which was, again, if this is a successful launch for EA Sports College Football 25 and the feedback stays positive, can you see this paving the way for EA Sports College Basketball to make a return? We did receive positive responses, but there was also a few people that, they were not a fan of the idea of EA Sports coming back with a college basketball game.
And again, I do understand that skepticism because EA has burned gamers over the years. Even if it's something as simple as not releasing on the PC, that matters to people. NBA Live left PC, NBA 2K came to PC. People who didn't want to get a console, who've always preferred playing basketball games on PC, just went with 2K. And obviously, those releases have stagnated on PC this generation. We haven't got that next-gen or current-gen port, that PS5, Xbox Series X port as yet. So it's not like 2K has always done right by the PC gaming community either. But to that point, they have at least been releasing on PC every year since 2K9, whereas EA stopped with NBA Live 08. I do actually have an article coming out in the future where I talk about crafting an alternative to NBA 2K. And I'll obviously go into more detail in that article, and I'm sure we'll circle back to it on the podcast as well. I do think that anybody who does try to compete with NBA 2K directly with an NBA game is going to have to be comfortable with being in the number 2 spot for the foreseeable future. Obviously, it's going to be a long-term project, a rebuilding project. You do still have to come back strong, as you said, but you are going to be in the number 2 spot by reputation, if nothing else. It's going to take a while to really get that momentum. Although, again, if influencers, YouTubers get behind it, then who knows? And if you do have a quality product, it's certainly going to get momentum a lot quicker. But one thing that I do think an alternative should do, whether it's a college basketball game or an NBA game, is to go that more traditional route, because 2K has leaned very heavily into the online space, and that is important. You do need to have that online competitive scene because of its popularity these days and how many people are interested in playing competitive online play. But having that more traditional approach, focusing on franchise, on dynasty mode, on having that simulation game, that realism, I think appealing to that traditional gamer base, that the traditional sports gamer base, rather than simply going for the online game and trying to compete as far as being Fortnite with basketball, having these open worlds and things that have nothing to do with the NBA or college basketball for that matter. Go in the other direction. Go more traditional. Still have that online team play because you do need that, but tap into that user base that feels spurned by 2K.
Well, two things. One, Take-Two has not exactly done online right.
Oh, no.
There are ways that EA Sports could come back with a college basketball game or NBA Live where they get the matchmaking right, make the matchmaking better.
Definitely.
Have stronger servers possibly, make it so it isn't so toxic like it is in the, NBA 2K basketball community. Take-Two isn't exactly knocking it out of the park with their online functionality, the environment, the community, etc. Number two, the game has to come back and be all around. And we've talked about that before. It needs to have roster sharing. It needs to have edit player features. It needs to have robust create a player feature. It needs to capture the community and allow them to grow together, via sharing rosters. And when stuff like that happens, videos get uploaded to YouTube. There's talk over on Operation Sports. There's talk on the NLSC. There's talk on the various Discords out there. It's plastered all over Twitter when a new roster is released, historical or an updated current roster. People want to be immersed not only in that online space, connecting with people online, building a player, all of that, but they want to be immersed in the game in general. They want to be able to customize their experience. They want to be able to spend hours on the game and get lost in it, doing something fun, doing something interesting, being creative. As you know, being creative is a big part of this. And basically with NBA Live 19, they threw, being creative for the most part out of the window, right? And you didn't even have the ability to share rosters on that game. That game never felt like really it was about the community. I don't think they did a good job with that. So I just think that if they do come back, it has to be an all-around title.
Oh, it definitely does. You can't not have that online team play. You can't not have roster sharing, all of the things that we expect of a game in 2024, things we expected of a game in 2015, 2010, even the late 2000s. Absolutely. And I agree, you do need people feeling really positive about the game, really hooked on it. We revisited NBA Live 2004 over the weekend, connected on Parsec to play the PS2 version. How fun was that game? How much did it remind you of the joy you had when you first fired up Live 2004, found out what it was all about, and just got hooked on that gameplay and the feel of that gameplay and the vibe, the whole vibe of the game, that NBA atmosphere just hooked you in. That's what you need.
You felt like the game got you.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of how I felt when I booted up NBA 2K17 for the first time. Right. Like I felt like I got immediately immersed in it. I loved the graphics. I loved the gameplay. I loved the way it felt. I loved the features, related to my league, related to customization, all of that. I loved the direction of the company. I just wanted to spend an ungodly amount of time on that game, and I did. I just wanted to be constantly in there making rosters. I wanted to throw teams on the floor via Play Now. I wanted to jump in and play my league with my brothers or against the computer, all of that. And so, yeah, the game needs to get you. And like you stated, hooked. Like you need to create a game that is going to hook the consumer and just make them want to get lost in it. So let's get to the responses, Andrew. I'll just read off one right now from X, formerly known as Twitter. Teddy Bear the Gamer stated, "Man, I was just watching Flight say this. This would be the perfect time with everyone in the gaming community having their eyes on EA." So he agrees with us that this would be the best time for them to try to make a comeback.
I mean, if you can have that positive momentum, if you can impress and come out with this game that is highly anticipated and lives up to the hype, that's going to suggest that you are serious about delivering a great product and probably serious about delivering other great products as well.
Exactly. Momentum is a wonderful thing, and it is a wonderful thing tenfold in this age of social media, right? At this height of access. Because back when NBA Live 2004 was released, Andrew, sure, we had the commercials, right, that we got pumped up about. We did have the NLSC forum, and there were other forums out there, and there were people talking about it. But this, in today's day and age, it's the height of YouTube. Right? It's the height of sharing. It's the height of Instagram. It's the height of Facebook. It's basically somebody could make a positive video about a new EA Sports college basketball game or a new NBA Live. And if that video gains traction, it could have millions of views in a very short period of time. Right? And that puts, a new college basketball game or NBA Live in people's heads, in their living rooms. They're excited about the footage that they just watched, and there's just so many eyes on it, and that could prompt millions of people to buy that game. So it's the landscape in relation to advertising and, like I stated, momentum is night and day different than it was, in the early 2000s or in the 90s.
I mean, obviously, buzz has always been important for selling any product, but in today's social media age, you can get a lot of buzz very quickly, a lot of loud buzz, as you said. To that point, you brought up the Live King's comments. Specifically, he said, I always felt that EA should release a college basketball game before an NBA game. The success of college football could lead to an EA college basketball game getting a budget because they don't have to directly compete with 2K. Eventually, they could bring back Live and have two B-ball games. And that goes back to what we said. Seems like a very wise way to go, at least to us.
And like I stated, too, let's not forget the relationships, right? They're building relationships with the right people with this EA Sports College football game, and they could leverage those relationships to help with their college basketball game. Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer as somebody who loves basketball video games and is a heavy consumer when it comes to all basketball game types.
And God of Sonda says, we can only hope. That would be awesome. Fake Kyrie Jersey says, hell yeah, I hope so. It's been a drought, and I know that's not lost on them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, those conversations have happened and are happening, right? Like, I'm sure that there's been countless conversations about, is this the time to bring it back? Countless conversations related to what's the best time to bring it back. Do we have the right people to make this happen? Can we compete? All of that stuff. Is there still an audience for our games related to basketball, et cetera? So, yeah, I'm sure this has been a conversation that's been going on for years.
Reese says, God, please no. Their basketball games are even worse than their football gameplay. And again, that goes back to the skepticism and the distrust of EA that is absolutely understandable. But my counterpoint to that is, don't buy it. Obviously, if you don't trust EA and not impressed by what they're coming out with, then by all means, vote with your wallet. But I think a lot of people do want that competition. So I don't like the argument that they shouldn't. Certainly, by all means, say that you won't buy it. I mean, that is certainly acceptable and understandable, as I said. But yeah, I don't think we should stand in the way of it, because you can certainly boycott the game, avoid it if you don't want to play it and don't trust it and it doesn't look good, or you play the demo and it doesn't capture your imagination, doesn't capture your interest. But yeah, we do need this competition and alternatives in the space. So, yeah, for the people who want it, I think it's better to cater to them than the people who say, no, don't make a game I'm not interested in.
You're entitled to your opinion and your tastes and whatnot. But my question for people who have that stance, who say stuff like that, is, do you not understand how much that could help elevate Take-Two's products? Like their NBA 2K series, how it could possibly make their game more fair to you, depending on what EA Sports does, how it could make them, maybe even make more improvements to their graphics, to their gameplay, make their game better, get some new minds into their game that freshen up the experience. If EA Sports came back, we're going to talk about NBA Live for a second. If EA Sports came back with NBA Live, whether you buy NBA Live or not, it is absolutely impacting what NBA 2K does. right? What Take-Two does with the NBA 2K series. And it absolutely makes them have their eyes on the EA Sports product and absolutely makes them elevate their game. So, that's my take on that. And in relation to him saying, oh, hell no, what about the people out there that do want an alternative? You got to think big picture here, right? Like, you're basically saying that you don't care about your fellow gamer, right?
Yeah.
By saying that you don't want them to create another option for this space. I'm going to say it, there's millions of people out there that love basketball, that play NBA 2K, that would absolutely love to take a look at another option. Or there's 2K fatigue, where they would love to, dive into something new and different and fresh, and they could have a lot of fun and create a lot of memories with that new title. So I encourage the community to think big picture with this stuff. Think about your fellow gamer and think about what it means in totality if a new game comes into this space, because then there's competition.
And again, I understand not having interest and not having trust in EA as a brand, as a developer and publisher, but like you say, the big picture is that competition is important, alternatives, viable choices are important. And it goes back to something that really bugs me, and it's not just basketball, it's pretty much anything. The people that basically have that opinion that if I'm not interested in it and I don't like it, it shouldn't be made. Like, I don't like that TV show, they should cancel it. Well, what about the people who do like that TV show? They can watch it, you can choose not to watch it. There's a kind of selfish and myopic view to that if I don't like it and I'm not interested in it, it shouldn't exist. And I just disagree with that point of view completely.
Yeah, and then there's another way to look at this, and I'm going to read Remy's comment. So he states, I rather have NBA Live to make a return. So I'm guessing his thought process on this is, I don't want them working on a college basketball game. I would rather them work on an NBA Live. Yeah. On an NBA Live return. And that's okay, right?
I get that, yeah.
I mean, he's still thinking, I get that. I don't think he's saying that he doesn't want EA Sports to produce a college basketball game. He's saying that if he could choose which one they would be working on right now, or if they were to come back, he chooses NBA Live. And you know what? I'm with you, Remy.
That's where his interest lies. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's my interest too.
Same. Yeah.
Right. If they were to come back with a basketball game, I could make the choice, I would say, go for it. NBA Live. Like, I hope you guys are working on NBA Live. So, I don't think he's being selfish in that response, but I've seen a lot of people over the years basically be like, EA Sports needs to, never come back to the basketball gaming space because they'll never be able to compete with NBA 2K, or they've already damaged their brand enough and nobody wants to see EA Sports come back with a basketball game. Like that all of those things couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, also, nobody plays my team, nobody plays my career, nobody does anything, nobody wants anything, apparently, or plays anything. So a lot of people use the royal we, so to speak, when they talk about what we want. It's no, what you individually want. And there are definitely people who want an NBA Live or a new NCAA basketball game, or it would be a college basketball game. They don't have the NCAA license, they don't have that relationship with the NCAA anymore. But yeah, if you're not interested in it, by all means, don't buy the product. But no, I definitely get where Remy is coming from. I would prefer Live to a college game, an NBA game to a college game, but a college basketball game may be a way back to another NBA game from EA Sports. We're looking at it from that perspective. But no, I get where he's coming from. But and again, I get where Reese is coming from as far as not having interest in the game or trust in the brand. But to that point, if you're not interested, just don't get it. Everybody else should be able to get a product that they're interested in.
Exactly.
So jumping over to Facebook now, Jacqueline says, it's a Madden reskin. You won't see this for college basketball anytime soon because there isn't a current-gen NBA Live to reskin. I mean, I've heard conflicting things about College Football 25 being a reskin. There's been a very deep dive gameplay blog, I believe, that a lot of YouTubers have responded to that have seemed very optimistic about it. So I'm not as familiar with the Madden series. I don't play Madden. I've tried a couple of demos over the years, Derek. I don't follow the NFL, so I'm not into that series, so I can't really comment on the quality. I do know that like Live, Madden has had that issue with games feeling stale from the comments from people who do play it. So I guess that's a concern, but I've heard conflicting things about whether it is just a reskin or whether it has brought in some new mechanics, because I've heard people say both things.
I will say this. She has a point when it comes to, we don't know if EA Sports has a base for their college basketball game that's strong, right? Or one that's already been in heavy development. I don't, from the comments that I'm seeing about EA College Football 25, the majority of people think that the gameplay looks fresh. The majority of people are saying that it doesn't look like a Madden reskin, and they're pointing out reasons why it doesn't. And you know as well as I do that if that footage that's been shown, which is not only a trailer, but there's been like regular gameplay footage, a lot of it being shown all over social media, you know that people would be nitpicking and saying, well, this is in Madden, right? This is a Madden reskin moment or animation, or, you know, this looks like Madden. And I am just not seeing those comments, right? And like you, even though I pretty much bought Madden every single year, like you, I'm not a pro on Madden. I don't spend a lot of time on it. I don't know the football gaming space like I do the basketball gaming space. But I do see the feedback that these gameplay videos are getting, and people are stating that it doesn't look like a Madden reskin. So the last thing I'll say about that is you got to start somewhere, right? And my opinion is, and I've said this over the last few years, I believe that in the background they have been working on a basketball title, whether it's been college basketball related or NBA Live related. And I think that, you know, if they come back, there's always a first release for everything, right?
Absolutely. And that is a great point, obviously, that there does need to be that base to work from. That technology they've been working on, developing in the background, mocap, everything else, and certainly modes, as we say, it does need to be that all-around product. So, and again, I get the skepticism to that point. Alex says, if the game has the same glitchy crap and gameplay as the last umpteen Madden games, then what's the point? I have no hype for this game and no faith that EA can deliver a good game. EA has eroded that trust with gamers.
With basketball. Right. And Madden, obviously, but they've also had positive releases for the company that people really did like. So
sure.
It's not just, you know, basketball and football are not the only games that EA Sports produced or produces, etc. So I also want to point out, I don't think that NBA Live 19 or Live 18 was glitchy. Like, I don't think either of those games were glitchy at all. Right. I also think that NBA Live 18 and Live 19 were not even close to reskins of Live 15 and Live 16. Yeah, I think you would agree.
Different feel.
I think those games play a lot different. Not only do they play a lot different, they look a lot different. They even changed a lot of the graphics and whatnot. They added a ton of animations. They went in a different direction gameplay-wise. So they've shown with their basketball series that they will try new things, right? They will go in different directions.
For better or worse, yeah, absolutely.
Whatnot, for better or worse. But I don't like to look at a company in totality that way, right? Because, like I stated, football games are not the only things that EA Sports have been producing, right? They've produced a lot of successful games and a lot of games that people are really positive about.
And more optimistically, Selvin says, I hope so. And Royce says that I could see NCAA March Madness returning for sure if EA College Football 25 is a success. Can't see how EA could shoehorn in an Ultimate Team card collecting mode into College Football 25 or a March Madness game. I'm sure they'll try. And yes, certainly developers, publishers will certainly try to put in those microtransactions any way they can. Says would like to see NCAA March Madness return, just as I'd like to see NBA Live, NBA Jam, NBA Street, NBA Shootout, NBA In the Zone, NBA Hoops, NBA Showtime, NBA Ballers, etc. return. Even for 2K to get their act together would be great, but I know that will never happen. And that goes back to 2K fatigue, as we've said many times before, Derek. We have seen what a monopoly will do in the basketball gaming space. It's no surprise. We've already seen what a monopoly did for football gaming with Madden, so it shouldn't be a surprise that 2K, even though they were the darlings of basketball gaming at one point, and certainly were releasing some fantastic games and improving year after year for a long time there, that once they got that monopoly, once they could do whatever they pleased and reach into our pockets, as you've said so many times in the podcast, Eric, then that's what they're going to do. That is what companies do these days. And when you have a monopoly, when you are the only game in town, then you do have gamers at your mercy. And yeah, I'd love to see all of those series return, obviously, or certainly some of them. I'd love to have a new Jam game, new Street game coming out every few years, live competing with 2K and college basketball games as well. I think Royce, like us, is just enthusiastic about basketball gaming and would love to have those choices, and that is important. Again, we do understand the skepticism, the dislike for EA as a brand, the distrust, but somebody's got to throw their hat into the ring, and EA are in a great position to do so.
They're definitely the most equipped to do so right now. I also want to say that one of the draws for some people related to a college basketball game is maybe they won't have to deal with that ultimate team drama, the ultimate team BS, taking advantage of the consumer. It's like what we get with NBA 2K My Team, and some people have said that ultimate team has kind of been unfair in the past as well for the NBA Live series. So that's kind of a draw for if they come out with a college basketball video game first, Andrew, because we may not have to hear about all the ultimate team drama that takes place. But yeah, no, I think options in the space are really important.
And heading over to the NLSC Discord now for a couple more responses. Pep says, in response to wanting a college basketball game, yes, definitely. If EA would like to come back into basketball, then college is one of the options if college football will be successful. ZCB44 says, wouldn't shock me if EA gets back into college basketball, wouldn't have to fight 2K over market share and would probably sell pretty well, build it off the NBA Live 19 engine with enhancements. Now that they've been through the process of getting the rights to schools and players for football, they probably feel they could do it for basketball as well, I would imagine.
So I would hope that maybe they do not build off of the NBA Live 19 engine. That engine was used, for that game back in 2018. I do think that it was smooth, like as far as a lot of the animations in that game, but overall NBA Live 19, I think you would agree, just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
For me, I think that it was weaker from a gameplay perspective than some of the other mid 2010 NBA Live titles. If they were to use that engine, I would hope that they would scrap all of those canned animations. That might be the most canned NBA Live I have ever played. NBA Live 19, I think it is just flooded with canned animations. I think pretty much every drive to the hoop feels canned, like I have absolutely no control. And the block animations, I think you would agree. You know when they're coming.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can see that canned animation play out. And in games like NBA Live 15 and Live 16, defense felt organic. Those games were not filled with canned animations. When you were blocked or you got a block, it looked more realistic. And if you got the block, you felt like you were in control of that sequence. I think that there's a lot of issues with NBA Live 19's gameplay that unfortunately not enough people highlighted, related to heavy catch animations, heavy passing animations, just so much delay trying to do certain things on the court. So I would hope that they would come back fresh without, building off of that NBA Live 19 gameplay direction. But you know what, if they could, come back and make the graphics stronger than they were in NBA Live 19 and clean up those canned animations and make the game fun, you know what I mean, and less frustrating, then I would take a look at that and probably buy it.
Well, Pep does bring up that the NBA Live series was running on EA Ignite right up to the end there, and EA has basically abandoned that engine in favor of Frostbite, so it probably would be a new engine for a new basketball game anyway. So yeah, I'm guessing they wouldn't build on Live 19. That's probably why they ended up scrapping Live 20. They probably were trying to rebuild, possibly bring it over to Frostbite or another engine. But yeah, we will see, and my final comments here are that we definitely want competition in the space. You and I, we're not alone in that regard. We understand that some people don't trust EA, but, vote with your wallet by all means.
Yeah, and I'll say again, last thing I'll say about it is competition is good for everybody and options are good for everybody, right? And I don't even think that's debatable. So let's get to this week's mailbag.
To the mailman, the bump fake. What an unbelievable dunk!
So I asked Hoopheads, build your perfect enforcer starting five using any player from basketball's past or present. Note, basically, those guys should be tough. Guys you didn't want to mess with. So, Andrew, I did something a little different with this one. We got a lot of community responses, and the five that I chose were all players that the community didn't mention, which made it really hard because they basically named every famous enforcer, right? But I wanted to challenge myself on this. But before I get to my list, what is your starting five?
Well, I have to admit that I got it wrong at first. I did an all-enforcer team, and I went back and looked at your post on X, excuse me, Elon, and I noticed that you did say starting five. So I did correct myself and get a starting five, but I also have the all-enforcer team as well, which which disregards positions. So I'll mention both just for fun. The all-enforcer team that I came up with, Derek, and this is, once again, putting positions aside, Charles Oakley, Xavier McDaniel, Anthony Mason, Dave Cowens, and Maurice Lucas, who was literally nicknamed the Enforcer.
Dave Cowens. He is on my list, Andrew, and we were the only ones to bring him up. I'm not sure the younger crowd understands the type of player that Dave Cowens was. He was 150 miles an hour all the time. He was all hustle combined with that, nice mid-range shot, the moves around the rim, a legendary rebounder, etc. But he would absolutely beat people up with physicality all over the floor. And he would beat you to the 50-50 balls, all of that. Dave Cowens is absolutely one of the best enforcers in basketball history. So I really like the fact that you brought him up.
And for the starting five, Dave Cowens, Maurice Lucas, Charles Oakley, Vernon Maxwell, and Patrick Beverley.
Patrick Beverley? I always thought Patrick Beverley was kind of a fake tough guy. I get that he gets low and he will get in your face and whatnot, but I guess I never thought of him as a truly tough player. I think he's part of leagues that, in my opinion, were filled with kind of, I don't know, wannabe tough guys, fake tough guys.
No, I get that.
I will say, if you did want to include, which is probably part of your mindset here, if you wanted to include somebody, especially at the point guard position or, at the guard position in general over the last decade, maybe, then yeah, you could probably say Patrick Beverley. But I'm surprised you said that one.
That's pretty much what I was thinking, is trying to get that point guard in there and trying to represent the current day as well. And obviously enforcers are kind of a thing of the past. I do think that Patrick Beverley is a very successful irritant, a tough defender, and it's tough to say whether he's a fake tough guy or not, and that day is past, I suppose. But yeah, I did want to get a more current player in there, and Patrick Beverley did make a few people's lists, and he kind of jumped out to me as well. You could also say that possibly Tony Allen in there and move Vernon Maxwell to point guard.
I will say this, though. If you wanted to create a all-time irritator team, then
Bruce
Patrick
Bowen.
Beverley and Bruce Bowen and Reggie Miller, all of those guys absolutely can be on that list. So, like I said, I tried to name people that the community did not name, and we're going to get to those responses in a second. But what I have here, and I had to to make it a starting five, I kind of had to move people around into positions that maybe wasn't their natural position, but a position that I think they could play. So at center, I have enforcer Nate Thurmond, who Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said was the best defender that he ever played against. Just an absolute bruiser. Just, you did not want to be in the paint with Nate Thurmond. Robert Parrish, I have him slotted in at power forward. You remember him judo chopping Bill Lambier to the floor, right?
Of course.
You do not want to mess with the Chief. He never smiled on the court. I challenge you to find any footage of Robert Parrish smiling. He had a mean mug 48 minutes a game, and he would be absolutely physical with everybody and never back down. So I got Robert Parrish in there. At small forward, I have Rasheed Wallace. I didn't see him mentioned. I saw Ben Wallace mentioned. But Rasheed Wallace would talk your ear off. And he backed it up with some pretty physical play himself and was part of that 03-04 Pistons championship team, which basically hung their hat on being physical and being kind of an enforcer team in general. At shooting guard, Andrew, I have Michael Jordan. Didn't see him mentioned, but Michael Jordan personified tough, right? Like his two-way play, you did not want to be guarded by Jordan because he was going to be physical with you. He was going to try to block your shot. He was going to try to get his hands in there to steal the ball. He was going to hand check you when hand checking was allowed. And he was strong. There was a quote from Kendall Gill stating that Jordan was 10 times stronger than Kobe Bryant. And he played against both of those players. And Jordan would just beat you up and make you tired because of that strength and because of his athleticism and whatnot. I think Jordan also is a guy that would rarely smile on the court. He had a mean mug most of the time when he was playing. And he is probably the most feared player to ever play the game, in my opinion. So I have Jordan there at shooting guard, and then I have T.R. Dunn at point guard, who he played shooting guard throughout his career, but he could handle the ball. I think I could slot him in at point guard. He was jacked, super ripped player. And just to give you kind of an idea of his impact as an enforcer, as a tough guy, as a hard-nosed player, they would play him on the Nuggets about 30 minutes a game, and he would only average 5 points a game. But you just had to keep him on the floor because you would put him on your best player. He would be guarding the best player on the other team. He would be all over the floor. He was strong, etc. So that is my kind of unorthodox enforcer 5 that I think I could compete with.
And that's a great point about the players who didn't put up huge stats. And Dennis Rodman is another player, obviously, that didn't average many points per game, wasn't a big scorer. Obviously, his rebounding numbers were eye-popping, but not a scoring threat. But you had him on the floor, he was going to vacuum up all those rebounds, he was going to be a tough defender. So people would just look at the stats. And Muggsy Bogues is another player, obviously, that you look at the overall stats, and they're not, he's not averaging close to a triple-double or 30 points per game. But you didn't want to have your ball handler go up against Muggsy Bogues.
Yeah, Muggsy Bogues, whose legs were the size of tree trunks. He was an absolute ridiculous athlete, incredibly strong. I also want to point out that for my all-time enforcer list at point guard, I actually have John Stockton. I saw John Stockton basically make one of my favorite players of all time, Jason Williams, cry because of the way he was affecting Jason Williams mentally. And he was all over Jason Williams. He was having Jason Williams make turnovers. He was being super manipulative of Jason Williams all over the floor. John Stockton was one tough SOB. And I would put him up against anybody on an NBA floor when it comes to being a tough guy. So I believe I saw him on a couple lists, but yeah, John Stockton's probably, my pick for point guard enforcer, number 1 of all time.
Oh, that makes sense. And I was thinking about MJ for the shooting guard spot, obviously, but I suppose I was going for more of those players with that enforcer reputation more so than simply being a tough player and a strong player. But no, I definitely see where you're coming from there, and he certainly was feared. Yeah.
I think, like I stated in the note, toughness comes into this choice, right?
Definitely.
Can you name a lot of players tougher than Michael Jordan?
Not many.
Exactly. So, we had a lot of community responses, so I know you have those in front of you.
Yeah, so let's tip that off with Teddy Bear the Gamer says Dennis Rodman, Kenyon Martin / Ben Wallace, Charles Oakley / Shaq, and Ron Artest.
So I think he did what you did and kind of did like an all-time 5. And Ron Artest, remember that elbow he gave James Harden?
Oh, yeah.
After a made bucket, where James Harden's lucky that he survived. If that hit him in the temple, he might be dead. He didn't even need to throw that elbow, but he was just losing his absolute mind. And I think that sometimes these enforcers kind of seem psycho sometimes, right? KG, right? KG's an enforcer. And like I said on a past show, I think that KG is actually insane. Like probably legally.
When you
insane.
Get down on all fours and bark like a dog at an opponent, you're definitely... Are you playing with a full deck?
Yeah, there's also a story about KG where somebody walked in to practice, and KG was there early, and he was in an empty gym, and he was just standing there screaming at the backboard. That is insanity. So you got guys like Ron Artest, KG, that basically could probably psych you out just because you never knew what they were going to do next.
And next up we have Roger Ward, one of the Live One legends, of course, says Ben Wallace, Larry Johnson, James Johnson, Latrell Sprewell, and Gary Payton. And Payton certainly was very tough, and he would let you know about it.
Yeah, Gary Payton's right up there with John Stockton as far as being an enforcer at that guard position. Never thought of James Johnson really as a true enforcer. I will say that Ben Wallace is an excellent choice, super intimidating at his peak. And Latrell Sprewell, he choked his coach, right? I don't know if that qualifies him as an enforcer, but he was definitely one of the tougher guards in the league as far as his personality went and whatnot. He wasn't going to clothesline you or anything, but he was another unpredictable guy.
And jumping over to Facebook now, Alex says Stockton, Sprewell, Stephen Jackson, Sheed, and Bill Laimbeer.
So Stephen Jackson, I always thought of as kind of like a fake tough guy. I'll never forget. I think he was with the Bobcats. They tried to make him like the face of the team, and they were going to try to build around Stephen Jackson. And I was like, wow, this is a really stupid decision. And I never thought that Stephen Jackson was that impressive of a player. I mean, obviously he was an NBA player, so he was obviously a great basketball player. And he definitely has some strong points on his resume and definitely put up some points in his career. But I was never that high on Stephen Jackson. And another mention there for Sprewell.
And Sprewell actually gets yet another mention from Jose. Says Latrell Sprewell, Charles Oakley, Maurice Lucas, Bill Laimbeer, and Kermit Washington. I'll
say this. Those of you who are saying Latrell Sprewell, PJ Carlissimo would absolutely agree. So Kermit Washington, obviously known for the punch to Rudy Tomjanovich that altered his career and changed his life, basically breaking his face. That's the type of enforcer we don't like, Andrew, right? We don't like the Kermit Washingtons of the world. And I do love the fact that somebody did mention Bill Laimbeer, because Bad Boys Pistons obviously got under people's skin as much as anybody ever. I would say that Reggie Miller is the shooting guard version of Bill Laimbeer as far as getting under people's skin and whatnot. But yeah, nice to see that somebody mentioned Bill Laimbeer.
Speaking of trash talkers, former teammate of Reggie Miller, Chuck Person, also had a bit of a reputation for talking trash back in the day. And
Larry Bird made him pay for it. And
absolutely.
Larry Bird made him pay for it in those 91 playoffs.
And Kermit Washington, it has been said that was kind of an unusual incident for him, that he was one of the nicest guys, and that was kind of ruined his reputation. But yeah, certainly not the kind of enforcing that we that we want to see on the court. We like physicality, we appreciate enforcers, but that was not a good incident whatsoever. David says Bill Laimbeer, Maurice Lucas, Draymond Green, Vernon Maxwell, and Patrick Beverley. So he's got my two guards there. Draymond Green, I think, has made a few people's lists as well.
I love the fact that he mentioned Mad Max. Vernon Maxwell, absolutely a hard-nosed player, super tough, super skilled. Still can't believe that he quit the team in the 1995 playoffs.
Yeah.
And that's wild. And if you don't know about that story, I would look it up. Maybe we can even go over it when we have more time on another NLSC podcast. But he also mentions Maurice Lucas, and Maurice Lucas is getting a bunch of votes, and he's on my all-time tough guy team. Obviously famous for going toe-to-toe and, putting up his fists to battle Daryl Dawkins there in the 1977 NBA Finals versus the 76ers, which really turned that series around. A lot of people say that is the turning point, that fight. So, the community obviously knows their hoop.
Maurice Lucas, of course, teammate of Bill Walton, instrumental in that championship series, did sadly pass away also from cancer in 2010, and indeed Luke Walton is named after him, apparently.
There you go.
And we have another answer from Royce here. Has a first team and second team. First team is Gary Payton, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, Charles Oakley, and Bill Laimbeer. Second team is John Stockton with Scott Skiles as the alternative, John Starks, Zebby McDaniel or Kenyon Martin, Anthony Mason, and Rick Mahorn. Another bad boy Piston there. Rick Mahorn, certainly an enforcer as well.
Funny that he brings up Kenyon Martin. Kenyon Martin said that Kevin Garnett was a fake tough guy. That I think he called him a porch puppy.
I saw that, yeah.
Whatnot. Yeah. So I think Kenyon Martin was a tough guy. I think that he definitely was an intimidator and an enforcer. I think that his numbers should have been a little bit better in his career, to be honest with you, based on his ability, his skill set, his athleticism. But he was on some strong Nets and Nuggets teams in his career. So yeah, I've always been a fan of Kenyon Martin.
Kenyon Martin, of course, referenced by Hot Carl in Blau, the iconic track from NBA Live 2003.
In NBA Live 2003, obviously that soundtrack went platinum. I still listen to it from time to time. Somebody on our NLSC Discord brought up that they have a basketball video game playlist on Spotify, and so do I. And a lot of the songs that I have on there are from NBA Live 2003, Live 2005, Live 2004, and NBA 2K10, 2K11, 2K12, 2K13, etc. So yeah, my basketball video game playlist actually gets a lot of play.
No mumble rap from 2K24?
I have 0 songs from any NBA 2K, 2K20 and up.
And jumping over to the Discord now for a few more responses. Pep says Buck Williams, Charles Oakley, Larry Bird, Alvin Robertson, John Stockton, and mentions John Starks as the sixth man. Also honorable mentions Ron Artest, Ben Wallace, and Rick Mahorn.
He mentions 2 guys that I was going to mention. Larry Bird personifies tough. And if you don't think that Larry Bird was intimidating or an enforcer in many ways in his career, you don't know basketball. So Larry Bird, and then Buck Williams getting a shout out makes me absolutely love this NLSC community. I think that he is grossly underrated at this point. Ridiculous rebounder, super athlete, muscled people around, like a legendary rebounder, had over 1,000 rebounds in one season. And yeah, you didn't want to go in the paint when Buck Williams was in there.
Said CB44, who I believe mentioned the basketball soundtrack playlist, says Vernon Maxwell for point guard, Tony Allen at shooting guard, Xavier McDaniel at small forward, Maurice Lucas at power forward, and Bill, his heinous, Lane Beer at center.
And you got to respect Tony Allen in this, right? Because Kobe Bryant said that the toughest defender he ever played against was Tony Allen. And Kobe Bryant is one of the best offensive players in basketball history. So yeah, nice to see Tony Allen getting a mention.
Juicy Shackmeat says, I'm going to copy Pep's homework a little bit, and I understand that because I kind of glanced at some other people's lists as well as I was making mine. Says Ben Wallace, Dennis Rodman, Ron Artest, Joe Dumars, and Gary Payton. And Rodman, you know, I haven't really talked about Rodman myself here on this list. He was on my short list as well. Certainly a very tough player and great at mind games.
Yeah, mind games are part of this, right? Part of being an enforcer are those mind games, even if you don't say anything. I firmly believe that a guy like Robert Parrish, who didn't say a word all game, was in his opponent's head constantly because of the way he carried himself, the way he didn't react to anything, all of that. I love the fact that Joe Dumars got a mention. I am floored when I watch footage of Joe Dumars, by the way. I want to point this out. He, in the 80s, the way he dribbled the ball, the way he was crossing over, the moves, all the different moves in his repertoire. My brother and I talk about it. Like, he looks a lot like Allen Iverson out there. Like Iverson before Iverson. Go back and watch Joe Dumars. Go back and watch some of his games where he scored 30 points, et cetera, and watch those highlights. His skill level, putting the ball on the floor and the different things that he could do, like the different ways he could make shots and the way he got into the seams. Just unbelievably impressed with Joe Dumars. And he carried that skill set into the mid-90s before his retirement. He looked amazing in the mid-90s on those Pistons teams with Grant Hill. But yeah, for those of you who don't know about Joe Dumars' skill level, look up that footage on YouTube, watch some of his games. He was ridiculous.
You talk about combo guards, and a lot of people seem to think of it was something that came along in the 2000s and the late 90s with your Allen Iversons and Baron Davis and so forth. But no, I would absolutely put Joe Dumars in that conversation, going back and forth between point guard and shooting guard throughout his career, obviously playing alongside Isaiah Thomas in the early days. Isaiah Thomas being the point guard. We saw Joe Dumars take over at point when Isaiah retired. And look, I'm not a huge fan of Isaiah Thomas, but I will give him his due, obviously. And recently, Stan Van Gundy called Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic the best backcourt in NBA history. And, obviously people talk about the Splash Brothers as well and their success, but don't sleep on Zeke and Joe D.
Yeah, they don't get enough credit for what they were able to do, and what I consider an incredibly talented NBA, furthest thing from watered down and playing against some of the best teams that ever entered the NBA. So I definitely don't think that Zeke and Dumars get their due even today.
And finally, Vin says Bill Laimbeer, Charles Oakley, Xavier McDaniel, Vernon Maxwell, Chris Childs, and six-man Anthony Mason. X-Man has made a lot of lists, obviously. Xavier McDaniel, not surprising there. Chris Childs, there's a unique answer.
Well, the thing is Chris Childs is most famous for punching Kobe Bryant. Yeah. Like, if somebody says Chris Childs, you think, hey, that's the guy that punched Kobe. So his NBA career overall was mostly unremarkable, right? Like, it wasn't anything to, shout from the rooftops about. But when it comes to what's his legacy in the NBA, it might just be punching Kobe, which is kind of an enforcer move, one that we don't like. And he also that was another mention for Xavier McDaniel, who was famous for being an enforcer in general, and he had a much better NBA career than Chris Childs. He was an all-star, and he was an excellent player on some really good teams. But he's also famous for choking Wes Matthews over at the scorers table, which people love to Photoshop Jordan's face over Wes Matthews to be like, hey, X-Man was choking Michael Jordan, et cetera. So, yeah.
People are weird. Just gonna put that out there.
Yeah,
people are weird.
But, I mean, it's not good to be mostly remembered based on violence.
Yeah.
So that's not a super strong point for Chris Childs. But at the same time, he was a very hard-nosed guard. And he would get in your face, and he talked a lot. You want to talk about a talker. Chris Childs never shut up.
Big free agent signing in the 96 offseason for the Knicks, along with Allen Houston. And, of course, they did trade Anthony Mason that year for Larry Johnson as well. And those Knicks teams, like the Pistons, you talk about a team full of enforcers.
Exactly. I think that the Heat and the Knicks in the mid-90s were
Alonzo Mourning, yeah.
Yeah, Alonzo Mourning didn't get a mention. I had him on the side there as an honorable mention. But, those Knicks and Heat teams, they would beat the hell out of you.
And I do love lists like this because we are mentioning some players who aren't necessarily in the top 75, top 100, top 50 of all time, although we certainly are mentioning some players who do make that cut. But those players were so important to their teams, as we said, even if they didn't have the huge eye-popping stats, or they weren't averaging 30 points per game, or across the board they weren't averaging close to a triple-double or something historical like that, but they made an impact on the court. And if you watched basketball, you saw the way that they just terrorized offensive players and shut them down or made their life hell. MJ had some big scoring games against the Pistons, but they certainly made him earn every point that he scored. So those players, so important back in the day, they have fallen out of vogue as the league has become less physical, obviously, and there is good physical and bad physical, as we said. But no, I definitely appreciate the enforcers.
But that's a good point, though, we used to highlight guys like T.R. Dunn. We used to highlight guys like Tony Allen and Bruce Bowen and Shane Battier. And they were like a really big part of discussion when you were talking about those teams matching up against each other, or you were talking about the best defenders in the league, et cetera. But you don't really hear that anymore, right? And that's just because the league has changed so much.
And we talked about empty stats and putting up good stats on a bad team on a previous show, and that's a whole discussion that you can go back and listen to. But yeah, stats are not the be-all, end-all, and these enforcers prove it.
Exactly.
But thank you to everybody who responded to Derek's prompts. As always, love having this conversation with the community, Derek. Passionate basketball gamers, passionate basketball fans.
So many responses to both of my questions this week, and I love it. I look forward to it every week. I love talking about your responses on the show, so please keep it coming.
With that being said, that has brought us to the end of this week's show. As always, we thank you for tuning in and invite you to join us again next week, either on the NLSC, nb-live.com, our YouTube channel, or your podcast app of choice. In the meantime, please connect with us on social media. That's where you can get in touch with us and, of course, stay up to date with all of our content. So, Derek, go ahead and plug the handles.
You can reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at D for3G and at D for384. I'm also on YouTube, D for3, and on the NLSC, D for3.
As for me, I'm Andrew in the forum and Andrew NLSC on X. The NLSC is on X and Facebook at the NLSC. We're also NLSC Basketball on Instagram and Threads. We're on YouTube at NBA Live Series Center. And of course, keep a look to the NLSC itself, nba-live.com, for everything we do for basketball video games. So, thank you once again for tuning in, and until next time, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Derek.
Go get buckets, everyone.